Hey everyone, it's Mallo, your host of IDENTECO After Dark and the creative director here for IDENTECO. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that this episode is brought to you in part by Gamers Heaven and their newest location just north of Seattle, Washington. There, in a family-friendly and welcoming environment, you can play tabletop or video games, read manga, or just relax with friends and sample some amazing drinks from their boba tea bar. If you want to learn more, log on to gamersheavenseattle.com to see hours and location. Now let's get on with the show. Hello, Fringers. The following podcast may not be suitable for all ages. Listener discretion is advised. Oh! Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of IDENTECO After Dark, a live stream and podcast where we talk about video games, TV, music, movies, and more. My name is Mallo, and I am joined, as I always am, by my co-conspirator, Alex the Humanoid. Welcome in, sir.
What's going on? I got hot chocolate because it's snowing outside like it is in our background.
Yup. Still snowing. Still not living in a place that understands snow. At all. Nope. Not a bit.
I'm done. No more snow. Done.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
It's fun for like 2 days. I can play with my kid. I can build a snowman. We can throw snowballs. The dogs like it. And then I'm done.
Look, this is a perfect opportunity to get old man yelling at clouds.
Yeah, it is.
Take your camera with you. Go outside and yell at the sky, please.
Yep.
Yeah.
Old man yell at clouds. Film at 11. It's the perfect time to spend inside drinking boba at a game store. That's all I'm saying. You can catch the first of our panelists there tonight. Or they're not there tonight. Usually you can catch him there. It's
Getting his
Joe.
daily boba.
Getting his daily boba tea. It's Joe.
Speaking
Welcome
of boba.
Yeah. I got an idea for the thumbnail that's going to be really weird. And I may be able to pull it off. We'll see.
All right, let's do it.
Our other panelist tonight, joining us again for this week because he's got thoughts and opinions on Boba the Fett. I mean, we got Boba the drink and Boba the Fett. Yeah, it's fine. It's Michael. Welcome in, sir.
Thank you. I just got to show off my preparation.
Look at it. It matches the beanie, too. He's like branded and everything. Like, he is way more prepared than me.
I coordinated. My wife was actually very impressed by my coordination tonight.
Fantastic. We are talking the Book of Boba Fett. New Disney Plus show debuted late last year, right after the end of Hawkeye. So we're gonna be talking about that. Light spoilers tonight for episodes 1 and 2 if you haven't caught up with those yet. We'll be talking about some plot points and how that connects to the larger Star Wars universe because we've got Kenobi series coming up, we've got Andor series coming up, and we've got Joe's favorite series that'll happen eventually coming up too. All of this will likely connect to all of that. But I kind of want to we've got a couple episodes in. We're at a point now where we can start to get like a general understanding. There's only 7 episodes for the season. So it's again, a typical limited run Disney Plus show. I just kind of want to start off with some general thoughts and feelings from the panel tonight on the show. Michael, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Are you going to make me go first?
Yeah. Okay. I looked at the program monitor and then I looked at the other monitor and you were smiling, so let's go with you.
I'm going to give you my hot take. This is my hot take.
Okay.
And my hot take is I enjoyed it. I enjoyed chapter 1. In my opinion, it is the weakest first episode of a Disney Plus series yet.
Okay. All right.
I feel I was on board for this the moment that they brought Boba Fett into Mando. I love Tamura Morrison in the role. I think he does great. I like the combination of he and Ming-Na. I think they work great together. I just felt like the first episode, I came into it really wanting to bite into that juicy like crime syndicate Star Wars. I really wanted to get like a really good bite out of that apple, and I felt like the split between the flashbacks and the current storyline didn't service the story very well. At least personally, I felt that way. So yeah, my hot take is that I enjoyed it, but I felt like out of all the Disney Plus shows, and I am a Disney Plus like enthusiast / apologist, I haven't disliked any of the shows. I've liked every single one for different reasons. This one, I like it, but in hindsight, I watched the chapter 1 a second time and I was like, yeah, it just isn't hitting on all cylinders.
Interesting.
You're not the only person I've heard say that. So I guess before we get to Joe's deep salt,
Joe pre-warned us, by the way, that he came into the show tonight salty.
Himalayan pink salt.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and drop all the salt in the chats.
Okay. Before we get there, I don't know if I'd call it the weakest first episode. It definitely wasn't the strongest. I think that still belongs to Mandalorian Season 1, Episode 1, and that reveal at the end of that episode. That being said, I don't disagree with you on the Underworld stuff, not doing it. I would have cut the first 2 episodes differently to make it feel more like that. I love the connections they're drawing, especially in episode 2 to the Underworld. For all of our Star Wars fans out there, you're gonna have to go back and watch Solo. You have to read some Dr. Aphra to see all the references. I don't know if it was the weakest first episode. That's a toss-up, I think, between that and Hawkeye.
When I say weak, I guess what I'm really speaking of is, like, I feel like they came into this with all of the thunder coming from Mandalorian and Boba's reveal on there, and you know, the Fennec character on there, like, so like they came into this with a lot of goodwill, at least for me. You know, I was happy to see this happening, right? And especially the initial trailer they cut, like him, you know, they kind of did the whole like dethroning thing in the trailer at the end of Mando. So when this show starts, that's already happened. I mean, you don't have to see that again. He's already on the throne. He's taking over, right? But I felt like the writing was a little bit weak, like in general. I felt like the chemistry that they showed you between Fennec and Boba in the Mando, I feel like it really wasn't there very much in chapter 1, and it's better in chapter 2. But you also didn't get much time with it because of how they cut the story. The flashbacks in 1, the whole and spoilers for those who haven't seen it, the whole reveal of how Boba survived the Sarlacc pit, completely unnecessary to me. Like it felt like fan service, and I'll say only because like it's Boba Fett. And if you thought that Boba Fett was going to fall into the Sarlacc, which takes 1,000 years to digest somebody and not get out, like, come on. The upside being that I do like that the flashback stories in 1 and 2 here are giving us a nice deep dive into Tusken culture, because I think that's the most fascinating part of what they're telling. Like how Boba got to where he is right now, I'm less worried about that, but I like getting to see this behind the scenes for Tuskens that we really haven't gotten since like the Knights of the Old Republic games. Like that was before Knights of the Old Republic, there really was barely anything about Tuskens.
Okay.
Right. So what do you got, Joe?
Yeah.
Bring it in.
Why do you say it like that?
Because
he's been on this show with you enough. Yeah.
I guessed it on your Star Wars episode after episode 8, right? When you all were doing Super Magical, right? I still remember recording that episode of Super Magical with you and Mallo, and me staring at you incredulously in Mallo's studio. This is in the before COVID times, everybody.
In the pre-times.
In the pre-times. Okay. PC, that's how we're going to start referring to it. So let's hear it.
I just want to preface this real quick. Boba the Fett is Joe's person. So, like, and I mean, like, he's got his own Fett helmet. He's got his own Fett armor. He's got the Fett tattoo. Like, he's got it all. So the whole show now hinges on Joe's opinion. That's all I'm going to put out there.
So I'm going to break this up into two particular sections.
Okay.
One, as far as the story goes, I don't hate it. Like everyone, most people here have said, at least, I don't really care a whole lot for the flashbacks. I've never really liked any film or show that's done the whole, here's a little bit of current time. Oh, we're going to flash back for a little bit, and here's some more current time, and then we're going to flash back a little bit. I think that's a weak way of selling a story. Like, if you wanted that flashback stuff in there as like an integral part of the story, you should have started with it. Like, having the occasional, like, brief flashbacks to talk about something is fine. But when half the story is being told in a flashback, I think it's lazy storytelling. I'm not a fan of that particular segment of it. I can say that whoever wrote this had previously seen Dune, because this is basically a shot-for-shot remake of Dune in a lot of ways, and we can break that down later. Very Lawrence of Arabia style too, which again is somewhat of an inspiration for Dune. I mean, there's some elements of Lawrence of Arabia in Dune. I think I have a pretty good feeling for where the story is going to go within the first two episodes, and that is, to me, never a particularly good sign that the story is going to be well written. Either they're following a formula and you're going to predict it the whole way through, or they're going to do the Deus Ex Machina stuff and they're going to just throw some monkey wrench in at the end of it to be like, "Ooh, look, we did something unexpected," instead of just being good writers to begin with. The story, though, as far as Star Wars stories go, is pretty basic for a Star Wars film. Star Wars, even not even just film, even if you bring in the old EU stuff and some of the newer stuff, Star Wars has always not been a particularly daring subject. They've always kind of borrowed bits and pieces and tropes from things, and it's kind of Star Wars-y formulaic, where you kind of expect the Star Wars cheese, and that's what this is. My one big complaint about the story is written like it was written by nerds who want to appear cool. The dialogue, some of the dialogue is just atrocious. But that, again, not new for Star Wars.
So I'm going to disagree with you, but I want you to finish.
For the second part, Fat Man is my man. I was very proud of what they did with him in The Mandalorian. Dude literally rolls up and just murks an entire stormtrooper squad, basically single-handedly. And in this one, he's like, "Oh, I'm an invalid. I'm a cripple. I can't really do anything. I get my ass kicked by a couple dudes with shields." And it's like, okay, you've like flip-flopped the tone without really setting any expectations. Like, if his ship had gotten damaged or something at the end of The Mandalorian, they could be like, "Oh, he's recovering from injuries." But they went from this, like, stellar badass in Mandalorian to Captain Cripple in this one, and I still like his portrayal of Boba Fett, but I kind of wish they hadn't dialed that knob back so hard. Like, they should have kept the tone consistent.
That was yeah, I'll agree with you there, Joe, too. That was one of my complaints, or one of the troubles I had with that chapter 1, is that ambush that happened felt weak. Like, we've seen what this Boba Fett can do. We've seen what Fennec can do. And the fact that basically the only reason they survived that was because they happened to have those two Gamorreans like that were with them. That was the only reason that they made it through that ambush the way they did. And I felt like that was, okay, yeah, you want to give the payoff that Boba decided to hire these guys, right, to give them a pass, let them into his fold, so now they have a reason to be there.
So are we covering episode 2 in this one?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We'll get into episode 2.
I think, yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to dig too much. I just want to say I agree with you, Joe. I felt like that fight scene, given the way they had portrayed Boba and Mando, that fight scene really didn't do anybody justice.
So
I have some tonal points for about episode 2, but we can come back to those.
Okay.
So here's where I'm going to disagree with both of you on the whole he's an invalid cripple. One, by this point, our Star Wars super fans. Boba's old as shit. Okay? Like, Boba's old. And he's been through a lot. So what I got from that scene was not that they beat him because he was an invalid cripple. I got that they beat him and Fennec Shand because Boba wasn't taking Fennec Shand's advice. The whole time, she's been like, you cannot treat these people like X, Y, and Z. And Boba's like, this is not how I want to do business, not how I want to do business. And as opposed to listening to Fennec Shand and starting his quest to rule by respect in the matter of, I've got to show these people that I'm still I can murk a squad of stormtroopers guy, right? He's like, yeah, go ahead and clean the helmet. Yeah, do the thing. Like, I didn't get that they beat him because he was an invalid cripple. I beat him in that even the best fighter, when they're caught on their back foot, they're caught on their back foot. I didn't get invalid cripple. I got, he's not taking this seriously.
I would agree with you if they hadn't immediately cut to him to a scene basically being dragged to a Bacta tank and keep putting him back in the Bacta tank over and over and over again. They're doing a showcase with the Bacta tank to tell you he's not well.
I disagree with the invalid cripple part, only because I feel like I don't feel like that's the tone they were going for. They are, I think, trying to show that he is certainly not the fighter in his prime, but I don't think that they went out of their way to show him as being weak in that way. I thought it was it was a weird tonal shift. Like I said, the tonal shift from, Mando to this, where you see this guy literally single-handedly with a gaffy stick, for the most part, take out an entire stormtrooper squad, hitting them so hard he's shattering their armor. Yeah. And then these, with Fennec at his side, these guys ambush him, and it seems as though they have no problem keeping him corralled. And I mean, the whole time I'm thinking, you have a jetpack, just hop out of that circle. Like,
see, that was the only thing in that scene that messed me up. I was like, your jetpack's on, dude. Your jetpack's on. Just jetpack up and start shooting.
You have a jetpack. You have the grappling line. You have the flamethrower. You have the missile that he used one time, and I don't know. It just.
I will say this:
the fight scene was weaker because of that way it was presented. I think
the fight scene was worse than the fight scene in Ahsoka. I will say that it was.
I would disagree with that just because the fight scene in Ahsoka was awful.
But that's because you hate Ahsoka. I will say this, and this is gonna really piss some people off, and I'm here for it. If you're following the current Star Wars canon, other than one shot of brilliance in The Mandalorian, all Boba Fett has done so far in canonical, Star Wars film is getting his ass kicked. Every time. All he's done is gotten his ass kicked.
He does a lot of cool shit in Clone Wars.
And,
I'm saying film, not animation, because I haven't caught all the animations.
Aside from the whole ambushing Luke and Bespin on Empire Strikes Back, which he did show some ability there.
And following the Falcon, drifting with the trash to track the Falcon, again, that's kind of shows the ingenuity of a good
I'm not discounting that he can be intelligent. I'm saying that in a fight, all I've seen him do is get his ass kicked.
Well, and let's be honest, his primary role, his peak performance was in the holiday special.
Well, this is true, actually.
But that's still also animation.
Now, as to the dialogue, I didn't think it sucked. I was like, the minute I saw who the executive producer was, one of the executive producers on the show, it immediately clicked for me after episode 1. I went, oh, got it. Know exactly what they're doing. And I would argue that the dialogue writing is intentional.
It's corny and cheesy and bad.
It's intentional. They're doing it. So bad is a relative term. I could say that the corny and cheesy, the way they're writing it, fits a certain genre, and I'm here for it. and I understand it. And I'm like, yes.
Weeb. Of course you're here for corny dialogue.
Nope. So here's the thing. One of the producers on this show that they've got for the entire series for this show was Robert Rodriguez.
And he also plays like half the aliens.
And he does like a quarter of the aliens. Yeah, him and the other guys are doing the aliens. Robert Rodriguez made El Mariachi. He made Desperado. Mm-hmm. He made a lot of those old. He did From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, on the writing front, I hate that they chose to call his title Daimyo.
It's a spaghetti western. It's supposed to be a spaghetti western. It's this, and in fact, I won't be shocked.
Star Wars being a western.
And I'm saying it's a spaghetti western. I will not be surprised if later in the series he recruits 5 more people and we have the 7 samurai over again.
He's not going to recruit 7 more people. He's going to have the Tusken Raiders show up to help him save the day.
So there we go. 7 samurai all over again, right? It's a spaghetti western. That's what it's supposed to be.
Spaghetti Western is fine, because Star Wars has always kind of been something of a Western in a lot of respects.
Then why are you complaining? Come on, and we're really going to complain about this dialogue? I was going to go to Tachi Station and pick up some power converters.
I prefaced it with saying that Star Wars has always had bad writing. That doesn't mean it has to always continue having bad writing. My problem is they do shit like call him Daimyo. Like, Daimyo... For those, I don't think we did a podcast about it, but for those of my friends who heard me bitch about Rogue One, my one complaint about Rogue One is what was the name of the actor? The blind guy. I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head. But Star Wars, especially in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
Star Wars as a mainstream has a really bad habit of shoehorning particular things into a category that I hate. Why did blind Asian-looking space person have to be the Kung Fu master? Why couldn't that have just been someone else? Why do we have to typecast shit like that? And why are we dragging any amount of real world, air quote, into a Star Wars universe? Yes, and I've seen this argument done, that it's a galaxy far, far away. Chances are that they may have words similar to ours might actually be okay. Like, whatever. Daimyo is a very specific title given in feudal Japan. It sounds awful in a Star Wars setting. It's terrible.
That is the one. The Daimyo point is the one I will give you. It did throw me the first time I heard it.
Especially since I'm pretty sure they had already existed in canon to say what that title was that was not Daimyo.
There was no. So in the old canon, there was nothing for Jabba's position on Tatooine.
But they've always referred to his people as, like, for example, Bib Fortuna was always his major domo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and that was, he was the major domo, pre-Disney buyout.
Yeah.
Tip is saying that Daimyo is the head of a Yakuza clan.
That's fine. There doesn't need to be Space Yakuza in Star Wars. Call them something else.
I feel like Space Yakuza though would be so. Here's my pitch, Disney Plus. You've heard me criticize your stuff, with which I feel like in terms of writing.
Have they heard you though?
I know people.
People have.
If you really want a good series, just let Alex and I write a crime syndicate series set in Coruscant. We got you.
Well,
I'll take any planet.
No, just give us Coruscant. We got you.
Yeah.
Coruscant was supposed to be the setting for the Star Wars 1313 game, which was supposed to basically be Star Wars Grand Theft Auto on Coruscant, and they poo-pooed that because they're idiots.
Boba Fett. 1313 was supposed to be about how Boba Fett became Boba Fett.
It could have been a really awesome game, but they poo-pooed it. But I mean, and it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't think there can't be a Yakuza-style gang syndicate in Star Wars, because it's going to happen in that kind of setting. But we don't have to be so, like, tongue-in-cheek about it and call them daimyos. And I don't know, knowing Star Wars, they'll probably just take the name Yakuza and substitute a couple letters, and they'll be the Rakuza or something like that. But, like, come on, let's figure something else. Let's be creative.
Can we talk about some nice things now? Do you have anything positive to say?
Yeah.
I loved. Let's talk about episode. So I want to say, and this is where I was like, oh yeah, Robert Rodriguez, and I see again where they're going. The train heist.
For episode 2.
Yes.
So I was gonna say, do we want to talk good things about episode 1 first?
Oh yeah,
We haven't really dived into 2 yet. Good things I would say about episode 1. Again, the casting has been great so far. I like of course, it's Disney Plus. It's Disney. They're going to give a bunch of fan service in every episode and throw in little bones, throw in pieces of lore, things that, again, they kind of hick back to. You get the torture bot is now kind of inadvertently the protocol droid for the throne room.
I like that.
And I'm going to give total props for the throne room set. The throne room set looks fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did see something about how they had to recreate it, and when they show you the throne room, it feels right. It's a little bit more well lit than it was before, but other
that's
than that,
intentional.
It feels right. Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's intentional too.
I like the set design. I'll agree with that. The throne room and was it Mos Espa? I think they keep showing. I like the changes and the updates they've done there. That's been pretty nice.
Let's give it up for the Cantina band making continual
slow jazz. The Cantina band with like the samba version of the Cantina theme.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so here's the thing: if you watch it, and I watch everything with closed captions because my hearing's starting to go, it actually says like modified version of Cantina theme in the closed captions.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
It does. It says that it's a basically a remix of the original Cantina theme in the closed captions. So
I will say one of the nice things about episode 1, and this is also partially about Mandalorian too. Excuse me. I really like the updated Boba Fett armor. I kind of wish he had more like leg plates. I feel like he's a little top heavy the way they've got it designed right now. But I don't hate it. And I really, really love how they left in a lot of the like Easter eggs, so to speak, like the dent in the helmet. Like they could have like just scrubbed all that and said he repaired his arm, it's fine. But they left that kind of stuff in there because that's kind of a throwback to the older thing. I like it. And not to get too far into episode 2, in episode 2 you see him bring out his trademark EE3 blaster, which you didn't really see up until then, and that has also been updated in a way that still feels like the original, but also still feels kind of new.
So one of the things I like about the flashbacks, and one of the things, and it relates to the costume, is I love the way he's incorporated, because you see it in Mandalorian. When he puts on the armor in Mandalorian finally, he's got the black robes underneath it, and it's, you see the distinct difference between he's wearing in the flashback the gray jumpsuit that he used to always wear underneath the armor. I love the way that the robe kind of comes down behind his legs now. The black underneath the armor, I think, looks so much better. Well, the changes they've made make him look very much like a wizened old fighter.
I think the way the robe comes back, it hangs down behind the leg, is a throwback to there's a name for them, I can't remember what they're called, but the clone troopers had the leather skirts that came down. I think it's a nod back to that. Could
be. But I love the black underneath the armor more.
Mm-hmm.
When they revealed Boba in Mandalorian, I literally told my group of close local friends, I was like, this is the first time I've ever actually considered doing a Boba Fett cosplay. Like the new outfit is very much big guy friendly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think honestly part of it too, like I'm torn between the Mando outfit and the new armor, like the new look. Because there are a number of differences between that Tusken robes with the armor versus the kind of the way he's wearing it now. If you look at the two costumes, there's a number of distinct differences.
Well,
sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing play on the Boba Fett the character, especially the one they're kind of making now. Because in the EU he was a lot similar, but a little different. And then this one, I think the changes in design is showcasing that he is embracing change. He's not necessarily sticking to what he used to do. He's especially with the addition of the black robes. It's saying, look, I'm making this new part of me, part of my persona. This is me now. And I don't hate that. I know there's some people. My brother's not a huge fan of how they've changed up some of his armor because he's kind of a super commando purist. I kind of think that's okay, especially since they went out of their way in Mando for him to say, "I'm not a Mandalorian." So.
And that's pretty critical in how they've changed the character from the old EU, how they're redoing the Mandalorians, but keeping some of the old EU stuff for the Mandos. So I kind of actually like what they're doing with that stuff too. I agree with you, Joe. I think it's a good way to have the character be expanded beyond just, everybody forgets, and if you, I actually highly recommend on Disney Plus, there's a documentary called Behind the Armor, and it's all about Boba Fett. And the thing is that Boba Fett in the original trilogy has 4 lines of dialogue, right?
He was designed to be.
He's worth a lot to me.
I mean,
blah 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 blah. Like there was nothing, and he captured everybody's imaginations.
By having a badass armor. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
The T visor is like everyone sees that and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool."
Yeah.
So much so that they make that as an actual helmet now in a lot of Modern Warfare, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's a Modern Warfare that's because some guy went and actually made some tactical armor in the real world that was based off of it. But I see the Boba Fett influence and across a lot of genres. Specifically, off the top of my head, PlanetSide 2 has a ton of T-visor helmets now. Destiny has it.
The Army's working on a new face visor that involves the T-style design.
I mean, really? Let's be honest. The T-visor is a very old design. The Greeks had some.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a cool design. And
another good thing about the first episode, I will say, is I liked. So they also introduced the character of the mayor of Espa, but not so much the mayor, but the mayor's major domo. Yeah. And I don't recall the actor's name, but the actor, I'd previously seen that actor on the show Veep on HBO, and he plays the ex-husband of the vice president. And he is killing it in this role in Boba Fett. He's playing this slimy, skeezy, just political.
He's doing good at portraying a character.
I'm looking up his name.
I'm not gonna slap him. Oh, yeah, love it.
I'm not gonna try and mispronounce his last name. It's David. Starts with a P.
David P. Very good.
And
David
he's
P,
the major
you're doing
domo.
a wonderful job.
He is doing a wonderful job.
Yeah.
The only thing casting wise, and again, this is a me thing completely. I was a big Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, and Ming-Na Wen still, to me, is Agent May, and I see so much of Agent May bleeding into this character. I'm like, it's Agent May in space.
I really hope. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I really liked her as an actress, but again, I kind of feel like she's getting typecast quite a bit because the last 3 or 4 shows I've seen her in, she's played basically the same character. The one difference to that is the Marvel film Shang-Chi.
She wasn't in Shang-Chi.
Wasn't she?
Yeah.
No.
Who am I thinking
of? She was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Maybe I'm thinking of someone different.
You're probably thinking of Michelle Yeoh.
Michelle Yeoh.
That's who I'm thinking of.
She also, Ming-Na Wen, was the original Mulan.
By the way, it's David Paquesi
Thank you.
for Mox Shaez' major domo.
She was also in that Final Fantasy animated film they made so long, not the good one based on 7, but the other one. No, Spirits Within.
Oh God, I'm gonna be very upset if Boba Fett doesn't shoot the major domo, the mayor's aide. I
was half expecting him to shoot that receptionist guy who was like, "Do you have an appointment?" I was like, "When's Boba just gonna be like?"
I just wanted Boba to hold. I wanted Boba to hold that guy down and shave his mustache. But just one more good thing about the first episode before we move on, and that is, again, I feel like as much as I wasn't a big fan of the way that the writing kind of played between the flashbacks and the current story, again, I feel like they did a good job setting up the fact that Boba clearly doesn't really know what he's getting into.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really hoping that they give Fennec a little more to do than just kind of be his, hey, by the way, you should do it this. Oh, you should do this. Like, I want to see a little bit more about Fennec. I hope they give Fennec some more story development through the course of this.
I do too.
The thing that I will say is right now in the first 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett is it is reading a little bit like a Star Wars glossary. And it is going very deep into a lot of very obscure lore that a lot of people probably have had no exposure to so far. And it doesn't have the cute child hook that The Mandalorian had and things like that, where it can build up to the big reveals in that show. Now, as somebody who studied Star Wars a lot, I'm okay with it because like it's a very slow pace to this show as compared to like Mandalorian. But I'm okay with that to a degree because especially coming off of Hawkeye and how frantic the end of that show was, and then you roll into this and it's more methodical, it's more organic, I think is a good way. I don't usually like to use that term very much, but it does feel like a more organic show than maybe even, you know, on the same kind of lines as like Rogue One was very organic, you know. Whereas Mandalorian still feels a little bit too much like a gunslinger, which may, you know, might be the tone that they are going for with it, and that's fine. But it does feel a little bit more like it's methodically paced, and we're going to have a different type of ending to this one.
I don't super agree with the assessment that it feels like Boba Fett doesn't know what he's doing. I think this is going to be one of those ones where it's a long play where he knows exactly what he's doing. And the reasons for him, he's trying to go for like a softer, more reasonable approach to being a crime lord, which is, I think, a little unusual for Boba
I never
Fett.
thought I would hear.
Yeah. But I
That's
think
something like a compassionate conservative.
I think it's going to come out that he knows exactly what he's doing and he's not actually bumbling.
No,
I never get the sense he was bumbling.
I don't say that to say like he's dumb by any means. I feel like the feeling I got from this first episode is that he came in, took out Bib Fortuna, stepped into this role thinking maybe it was going to go a way that it was going to go differently than it is right now. Like, I think he felt like I'm Boba Fett. Everybody knows me. Everybody knows I'm Boba Fett. Hey, I can step in here and I've got the reputation. I've got, you know, all this stuff behind me that will let me just kind of step into this role, and that it's not as easy, you know, as Fennec was trying to say, it's not going to be as easy as you seem to think it is.
To comment on Other Doc for the podcaster, Other Doc was talking about how Star Wars is basically Kurosawa spiritual inspired type film, which I agree with you, it is 100%. And I know that And I know Star Wars there's probably a lot more words in Star Wars that are borrowed from real world languages than I really give it credit for. My problem is not that they borrowed words, because I mean they're telling it in English or whatever language you happen to be listening it to. They're telling it in an Earth language, so they're going to have to use some language that crosses over. But there's some specific ones like using like, for example, a Mob Dawn, or a what was the name? The Spanish ones. What were they?
Well,
called?
I mean, yeah.
I just don't like it's something. It's very on the nose. Like it's like if they suddenly started calling Jedi samurai.
Right. And so,
I mean, they kind of are.
I mean, there definitely are samurai.
Yeah.
But they don't call them samurai. And Jedi itself, I have seen that there is a Japanese correlation to the word Jedi, but it's so obscure that you have to dig through multiple layers to get to it. Whereas Daimyo, like, next thing you know, they're going to start calling the mayor Shogun. Like, it's.
I don't think they're going to go that far. I don't think they're going to go that far. Again, I understood it. It threw me a little bit. I'm just kind of letting that one, the daimyo thing, ride. I think it's more interesting because if you just take the original movies into context and not a lot of the other canon stuff, the idea that whoever's in basically Jabba's position was basically the one running the planet was not something you got from the original trilogy, right? In that it's, you're the mayor here because I said so, was not something I got. Even when you look at the prequels and stuff like that, like, I never got that sense of Jabba's level of power on Tatooine. I just figured Tatooine's his base of operations for running his syndicate. Cool. And they just leave him alone. And it's so far out in the Outer Rim that nobody gives a crap.
Alex, since you kind of jumped into it, well, like, let's hit episode 2. Like, we've kind of done episode 1. Like, let's jump in. And I know in the chat on the Discord, you said you were pretty happy with this episode. So why don't you start?
So again,
episode 2.
This is one where I felt Robert Rodriguez DNA a lot in how they're making these. I felt a lot of the spaghetti westerns. The flashbacks is like Dancing with Wolves all over again, right? But I like the way they're Dancing with Tuscans. And actually at the end, that was literally what I was thinking. Was I was like, it's dancing. It's a dance. They're dancing. Okay. And there's something specific about the one who's kind of acting as his teacher with the Tuscans that I want to ask at the end, if anybody else got this sense. And I had to go look it up on IMDb because I was just curious. I really like that whole sequence, right? I like the fact that he's having to see that, like, he's had this reputation as the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy, and I can freeze people with a look, right? And now he's being humbled and is having to relearn how to be a warrior. I like the concept. I like the idea that he's like, you know what? I'm going to let you live after they take the train, you know, but I'm not doing it just out of magnanimity, you know. Overall, I think it's a much stronger episode than the first one. Right? I don't know if I go so far as to say the first was the worst. It's a much stronger episode. The stuff with the twins, the deep cuts in there with the gladiator.
Well, let's also cover the fact that this episode managed to make a CGI hut that didn't look terrible.
And the CGI, the two huts look great. I saw the gladiator and I was like, God, that motherfucker's got to be so hot in that fur. In the middle of the time that's Tatooine. I just love the westerniness of it. I love the train heist. I love the fact that instead of horses, they stole some swoops, and then he went into a bar and like beat up the cattle rustlers who were stealing the water from the first episode to take the swoops to bring them back to the Tuscans. They're like, I will teach you how to ride swoops. Yeah. And then they did a train heist. I was like, this is everything I want out of Star Wars. It's wonderful. This is great.
And not a Skywalker to be found.
Not a Force user. Let's go past Skywalker.
Yeah, not a Force user to be found. Yeah.
Not a Force user. Not a Grogu. And I love Grogu. But not a Force user.
In the first episode, there's a pretty intentional Lars household throwback.
Yeah.
That was pretty blatant.
They're doing deep cuts on stuff, and that's fine. But again, I don't see any Jedi running around. I don't see anybody using the Force. Yeah. If they can get through this whole 7-episode run with nobody who uses the damn Force, it will be better for it.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but that ain't gonna happen. So
I can only hope. There are some interesting rumors about what's going to happen in this show, and I guess we could talk about those later to see if we all think they're true. But I really enjoyed. I like him making his gaffy stick, which you see him mark the stormtroopers with in Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. Love that sequence, and you can see like this is a guy who enjoys learning shit, right? Like that whole sequence without dialogue, and the guy's teaching him how to make the gaffy, and it's like here, da da da. Thought it was wonderful the way that whole sequence went. I passed the torch.
I'm going to echo I hope it goes without a Force thing, but I'm going to modify it a little bit. And I would say I would be happy if they made it the entire series without Jedi or Sith. if they had some other force using group that wasn't an analog for one of those two things, I would be fine with that. Like if he went and talked to a mystic, or there was a healer, or something to that effect, because there's been hints all along, especially in the old EU, that there are other force using groups out there, and they kind of brought that back in with episode 7, 8, 9 with God, what was her name? The bartender lady. See, those movies are so forgettable, I can't even remember how her name was. But anyway, they kind of...
Maz Kanata.
Yeah. Maz Kanata. They kind of hinted at it. They never really outright said, look, she can use the Force, but she's not a Jedi. But they've hinted at it. So if they could just not have Jedi or Sith, I'm fine with that. I think we're probably going to see somebody. I'm guessing probably Ahsoka, since Ahsoka, or some reference to Ben Kenobi at some point in this, because those are going to be upcoming shows, and they really like to drop in teasers here and there about it. Maybe they're not going to directly show up, but like maybe a hologram or a message or something will show up about it. I don't know. As far as the content in the second episode, I'll agree it's a lot better. It's, I think, partly for me because it's a lot more action based. I don't think Star Wars does super well with stories where there's not a lot of action. I think that's, you go to see a Transformers movie because you want to see robots beating each other up. You go to a Star Wars movie because you want to see some space fighting of some variety, either on the ground or, let's be honest, Star Trek does amazing fleet battles. I can't wait till there's more of those. But there's some tongue-in-cheek stuff about it that did legitimately give pause, and I'm not upset about it because it is probably not their intent. But like, there's some cultural sensitivity things with the train scene that I think they kind of glossed over a little bit that I wasn't super happy about originally. But when I stopped and thought about it, I realized that was definitely not their intent. So leave that as it is. But yeah, it was pretty good. I think it was, again, pretty standard for a Star Wars show. It didn't break any barriers. It didn't make me go, oh wow, this was, transcendent. It was a Star Wars show. It's pretty through and through. I just still kind of wish they would stop dumping him in a Bacta tank every 2 minutes, or at least explain why they're doing it.
That'll be episode 5.
I'm guessing it has something to do with him being a clone and some kind of degeneration that goes along with it.
That was my guess too.
Yeah.
It has something to do with the clone factor.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably what. I mean, being in a Sarlacc for even a short amount of time probably didn't do his health any good, so they may still be dealing with the after effects of that. But this one did very clearly cement me in the idea that the Tusken Raiders are the stand-in for the Fremen, that the Hutts were the Baron Harkonnens, and they got thrown off the planet because Jabba died, and then someone else came and took it over, and then now, I think they're going to eventually work up to the point where Boba Fett is leading a Tusken Raider rebellion, and to do some kind of, for lack of a better term, social advancement for them, either through making them truly independent and getting people to stop hunting them randomly. But yeah, fairly formulaic. I think it broadcasts the intent of the show going forward pretty hard. I kind of wish they hadn't done that quite as much, but all in all, pretty decent.
So, when does Han Solo show up?
I would legitimately shit my pants a little bit if they had a Han Solo cameo.
Specifically, let's leave that
your
for
diaper
the
ready,
because I want to touch on that. But let's what's Michael got to say about episode 2?
Yeah.
I was actually going to skip to Mallo, since he's been kind of quiet about some of this stuff for the most part. I know he's a little tired.
This is what he does. He sits in the corner and picks and prods.
I stroke the beard and I host a show. That's what I do. People don't show up for my stuff.
As the host, how did you feel about episode 2?
I like that. That's where I get a little bit of the organic feel from it, right? The idea of getting the lore behind Tusken Raiders and getting more of that flushed out, and they go from being wasteland ruffians to a more deep and understanding tribal society, and we get to see that played out in a very nuanced way on film. I liked that part. I liked it a lot. I liked that Boba had to learn how to communicate with him, for crying out loud. He had to learn how to do all of these things. The big criticism about Boba Fett is that he's the 007 of the Star Wars universe. He's nothing without his gadgets. And we saw in Mandalorian that he could handle himself with a gaffy stick, and you're like, wait a minute. Hold up. And so between the two things, you can draw the comparison now, or draw the timeline at least, of how he loses armor to some Jawas, again getting his ass kicked, to actually learning how to fight. Because to the best of our knowledge, at least on the current canon, we don't know if Boba ever learns how to fight. He lost his dad in episode 2 movie. And then he learned to be a bounty hunter based on what his dad taught him. But again, it was all tricks and gadgets.
Yeah.
But again, there's more of that in the animated series. That
you got to get them cartoons.
Like literally,
I ain't got time for that.
Young Boba Fett basically runs with a bounty hunter crew. Like that's where he learns all the tricks of the trade.
Well, so and Mandalorians are meant to be able to hunt Jedi. Old canon at least, right? Like they are more equipped to be able to handle some of that stuff. So there is some of that, but it's just the understanding that he's learning hand-to-hand combat. He's learning different ways of working through things, and being shown on film in an adult, I guess. Not that the Clone Wars was a kid's show. Look at the themes in that fucking show. No, it was not. There are some definite themes that should not be shown to kids.
In the later seasons, especially.
Yeah.
It was a kid show. Through and through.
Go ahead, Joe. You were jumping in.
This is more of a question for those of you who have religiously watched Clone Wars. Did they ever discuss in Clone Wars why he has the dent in his helmet?
No. It is explained elsewhere in canon. They do explain it, and I'd have to go look, but I know it has been explained in the new canon.
Because I'm curious. In the old canon, he got a fighting Darth Vader.
Right. And in the new canon, it's the same thing because of the stuff with Beskar, and how Beskar works. And the new canon, they're still calling it Beskar. It is still Beskar, but I'm not as clear on the rules of what Beskar can do.
For those who don't know, in the old canon, which I don't know if it's the same in the new canon or not, in the old canon, he basically fought Darth Vader to a standstill over a bounty, and he got the helmet dent because he fired a shot at Darth Vader, and Darth Vader reflected the shot back into his helmet, and that's what gave him the dent.
Classic, which also doesn't make any sense because Beskar usually, like, we've seen in the Mandalorian that it like deflects most laser blasts and stuff. So
well, in the old canon, his armor was not Beskar. It is what they call Dura Steel in Star Wars.
Gotcha.
He didn't get the Beskar until 30 years after the events of.
A little less. Well, he gets a Beskar version when he becomes the Mandalore.
Yeah, that was 28 to 30 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And up until that point, he hadn't, in the old canon, he hadn't considered himself a Mandalorian either. Up until that point, until they basically made him a Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets funky.
The whole canon of Mandalore is funky, and I'm interested to see how they're going to carry that now in season 3 of Mandalorian coming up. I'm very interested to see how they're going to thread that needle.
Well, they've hit a lot of similar points from the old EU. The only difference I can see is in the Mandalorian, they mentioned that they glassed the planet, which they didn't do in the EU. They did bombard it quite a bit, but they didn't like full on glass it.
No, and the Mandalorians are like a cross between, like, in the old canon when they fleshed them out finally, they were like a cross between Maori and Scottish culture, and she took the two warrior cultures and kind of
specifically Celtic
mushed them together and was like, Mandalorians.
I actually wrote an email to her asking about that once, and she responded directly to me. That was really nice. But yeah, she said it was mainly based off of Celtic with some other semi-druidic things thrown in.
I know that the Maori connection came from the fact that Tamara Morrison is Maori. And after he had played Boba Fett and all the clones now look like that, it was like, okay, well, that's what Mandalorians look like now.
Well, my original question was asking what she got the inspiration for Beskar was, because they hadn't really talked about it much. Beskar is like a Beskar sword, and it's supposed to be like some cultural thing for the Mandalorians. And she literally said, it's a machete.
Oh, okay.
It's just a machete.
It's a fancy machete, though.
Yeah.
So predictions. Michael, where do you think they're going?
Hold on.
Besides
hold on. No, I let Mallo go, but I haven't gotten.
You haven't
my
gone.
piece
Sorry.
about episode chapter 2 yet. So I'm going to keep it real brief. I thought the writing, again, for me, the writing stuck out in chapter 1. Chapter 2, I thought the writing was much better overall. I might be able to say that for a good portion of the story, especially the second half, there's not a lot of talking. So
that is why this episode is called Furious Nodding.
Yeah,
because that's what they did the most of, is just
it's a lot of grunting.
A lot of grunting and a lot of
donkey noises. There's a lot of grunting. There's a lot of hee-haws. But I thought, and the split, the way they did the storytelling this time, where they actually made it basically like a 40-60 split. The first 40% of the episode was just the crime syndicate stuff. The bottom 60% was the heist, the train story. I like that split better. If they're going to keep like kind of dipping in and out, I would rather do a split like that than them try to interweave it, because that felt messy to me.
Agreed.
The way they told it this time felt much more in line with, we're going to tell you everything about this part, and now we're going to dive in here, and we're going to give you the rest of the story here. Like, I'm okay with that. That felt better.
So I would guess that the flashbacks are going to be done by the end of episode 3.
Yeah, I feel like they can't continue them through the entire 7-episode run. I don't think they can do that.
I think you're underestimating Star Wars.
No, because Arrow did that, where it was like the first 5 seasons of Arrow was 1 year of him being on that stupid island and missing and stuff. I don't think they're going to do that, because they're just going to get him to the part where he shows up and meets Mando. That's
all they have to do is show him leaving Tatooine to like track down his armor.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I don't think they're far away from that now.
Or not even leaving Tatooine. All they have to do is show him tracking. All they have to show him is basically going off to track down his armor.
Yeah, and you see him in Mandalorian when he's in the black robes, following the Mando.
Watching from afar. You get that. They show.
So he's tracking down his armor at that point, and he comes very close to it, and then Din Djarin runs off with it, and he's like, "Well, shit," and then has to go off and hit for a little while.
What's the whole trippy dream sequence with the tree and the water and
with the lizard? The lizard crawls in his brain.
Well, that's clearly like a Navajo vision quest, right?
It does feel like that, yeah.
It's a magic tree that gives you the wood for your gaffy stick.
It's an Aboriginal, or it's a
deep throwback.
Yeah,
it's a deep throwback that they have talked about in the show. They talked about it this time. One of the Tusken Raiders mentioned that they hadn't done something or other since the oceans were on the planet. And that's some pretty deep lore that was in the old EUs, that Tatooine used to be a very vibrant planet, and Jawas and Tusken Raiders are from the same species that have just diverged evolutionarily speaking. And they're drawing a lot of inspiration from a lot of Native American things, which I am not terribly upset about, and this kind of touches back on the cultural sensitivity thing I was talking about earlier. I'm not going to come out and call it cultural appropriation, because it wasn't. It was different. But they're drawing a lot of parallels, and this is where I wasn't happy. The train scene where the train first shows up and they just start blasting Tusken Raiders from the train out of nowhere, that's straight out of history. That happened to a lot of Native Americans, and they're pulling a lot of inspiration from that, and I kind of wish they wouldn't. I'm really going to be disappointed if they keep pushing that route. And I just hope they kind of back off on that a little.
I think they will.
How much of that is pulled from like the Lawrence of Arabia type stuff too, though?
That's also that too.
Like, and I'm wondering if it's like is it Does it make it worse, like in your mind, Joe, that it's a copy paste of a copy paste kind of thing? Like that it's been done before already. They should know better.
I don't know if it really makes it better or worse. I think it makes it a little more intentional on their part that they intended to paint that allegory. If only because they then double down with it on the whole Vision Quest thing where he goes out and gets that thing. They're kind of like, I don't think it was their intent to be like, hey, look, we did this thing and fuck you if you don't like it. But like they doubled down on it, and that's part of what really set me off about it.
Michael, go ahead.
I would say it felt very much like an easy way, and I say easy, not that it's better, but it's felt like, again, for viewers, it's an easy reference to make to try to show that, just like as they've shown before with the Tuskens, basically everyone on Tatooine just sees the Tuskens as some kind of backwards primitive people, right?
Well, it doesn't help that they also attack a lot of things.
Well, I mean, but again, that they are showing, they're using that mechanic because they know that that's going to pull that back into our frame of reference. Like we can see that behavior and know exactly what they're talking about.
And it's universal.
Doesn't make it better, but it's easy for a viewer to see that and make that connection.
And I think the reason it didn't strike me so much is that they have that sequence where the Tuskens are like, look, the Off-Worlders do X, Y, and Z. And they're showing it from the Tuskens' perspective, right? Like, these are what the Off-Worlders do. And so it's kind of almost that universal, like, colonizers going to colonize, and that's not good, right? Was kind of the message that I got from that. When they were like, the colonizers have all these weapons and stuff that we just don't have.
Well, I was...
You know?
I was just waiting for when they attacked the train for it to form up into a circle and make a defensive structure. And if it had, I probably would have chucked my remote across the room. Because, like, and I know, like, I'm not trying to be, for the audience, I'm half Native American. I don't really claim that ancestry too much because I was raised not Native American. And it doesn't sit well with me when they draw those allegories for show effect.
Real life events.
Yeah. Especially since that's something that really doesn't get covered a lot in the public sphere. Like, the fact that Native Americans were treated very badly just kind of never really, it doesn't come up with super a lot. Especially if you're from a place like Oklahoma where they're still treated like shit. But yeah, I mean, I'm not upset about it. I'm not going to go out and say they're being racist or racially profiling or cultural appropriating, but I just kind of hope they pull back from that a little bit.
That's fair.
So make a point, but don't beleaguer the point, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I think in that context, it works a lot better than if, again, kind of trying to hammer this thing home. They don't have to hammer it home. They've done it over so many parts of their Star Wars media where they've shown that the Sand people, the Tusken people, are viewed as a primitive, as Aboriginals, as primitives, as indigenous people. And we know how the real world treats indigenous people.
I do.
Yeah. I mean,
and they have kind of beat that point because that's pretty common. Like the Wookiees, like everybody treats Wookiees bad. Like it seems to be like the humans treated the indigenous people.
Well, I mean, badly. Like literally
in Star Wars.
Well, Star Wars is all about colonizers colonizing, and
I think one thing that I really did like a lot about the Tusken Raiders, even back before they really dove into the lore, is that the native people of Tatooine very clearly have some capacity for technology. They have blaster rifles. They have the respirators that they wear. Occasionally you'll see them with some kind of like artificial lighting, though that's often implied to be stolen from somebody. But they had some technical aptitude with the swoops because they were immediately trying to salvage it for useful materials. And I really like that kind of juxtaposition they've always had with the Tuskens.
And Mallo kicked into it earlier, mentioned it as well, but it was one of the big points for me too in this first and second episode. I mean, I've always kind of been fascinated by the Tuskens, but we've known almost nothing about them. And to see the deep dive into kind of the Tusken culture and how they're kind of portraying that's like one of the most interesting parts of this show to me so far in general, is like building that out so that we can actually get a feel or a view for how the Tuskens actually are as a people versus these, you know, these perceived like threats, because that's how, you know, for the most part, everyone's ever treated them in a Star Wars piece of media is like, don't go out in the desert. The Tuskens are going to fuck you up.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
they essentially they've called them just savages,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
I
that's another thing that's done really well. We talked about the set design and some of the armor design and stuff, but like the way that they allow the Tuskens to have individuality within this one tribe of it, and you get some clear hierarchy, you get some clear warrior class, you get, you know, you see how everybody sort of brings up and comes along and things like that. Again, there's just that other level of depth there that I think is a detail that was really needed.
Well, in some of the older year, I don't think it's canon anymore, but in some of the older year, they kind of touched on that a little bit, where like everything the Tuskens wear is crafted by them. Like they
Right.
don't go buy it. They don't have a manufacturing plant. So there's going to be like individual, and some of it was also the individual are crafted as kind of like a coming to age type thing. So there'd be individual personalizations. There would be tribal differences. One Tusken Raider may have a different design than another. But one thing I really want them to touch on, I don't think they're going to, but I'd love for them to do it, is to touch on the interaction between Tusken Raiders and Jawas. Like, see what their relationship is like.
That would be interesting. On the Tusken thing, so I had to go look this up because the first 2 episodes, the one who's been basically training Boba, right? I didn't know what it was about it, but I was like, that feels like a female presenting Tusken to me,
For sure.
right? So I went and looked it
I
up.
agree.
It actually is a woman playing that Tusken Raider.
Mhm.
The one who's been training Boba. And I was like, wow, she really does like, but I thought it was interesting. Even in the costume design, I got that through.
Mm-hmm.
Without like, it's not like she's got like giant boobs or anything that would be like super obvious.
But they also,
but
but they
it's like,
gave
feels
that
like a woman to
costume-
me.
That costume specifically is the one Tusken costume in that tribe that has what we would think to be like dreads or long hair.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't even pick up
Which
on
could
that.
be legitimately long hair too.
Yeah,
The way that it's done.
Just let it be like
We have no
dreads.
idea.
Yeah, it could be.
You know-
Yeah, it could be a dread kind of piece for that, for being in the sand.
The combination
But
of
that actually,
like the grace
hair?
of movement, the build of the Raider, even under the costume, like you can kind of see like there's a I would say a more feminine build, and the grace of the movement. I think all 3 of those things keyed pretty heavily to the fact that character, that Tusken, was likely female presenting, or considered like a female of Tusken origin.
I also really appreciated that they brought through, and if you're not classically trained or for that matter even halfway trained in any fighting styles, some of it can be lost on you to a degree, but the depth and grace that they gave to the gaffy stick fighting style, you know, as they were training Boba, but you could see it through some of the rest of the warriors in that camp, that there was a nuance, and there was a style, and there was a way of being that felt correct for the planet and the situation that they were in. You know, and that's something that I really appreciated. You've got, you know, it's sharp on one end, it's blunt on the other. There's a reason and why they flow in the way they do, and it just made so much sense. And it was a great moment in my mind, watching all of that play out. Again, another level of depth that really brought it around.
On pretty much exactly the same note, I really appreciated, like, in the train sequences, whenever they actually go to do combat, like, you don't see them standing up, and there's like 1 or 2 that do, but they then immediately get shot. They don't really stand up and silhouette themselves against the top of the dune, which is a combat thing. You don't stand up on top of hills because that's how you get your ass shot. They would lay down at the top of the dune and do what you would expect Tusken Raiders to do, because even going back to the first episode of Star Wars when it came back in the 70s, they kind of portrayed the Tuskens as being a stealthy group of people. They always rode in a straight line to mask their numbers. They typically ambushed people. Like, that was their whole thing. And I'm really happy they didn't just be like, hey, let's go run down the side of the dune at the train and get shot up.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to touch on for chapter 2 was the small, again, the little things that gave me joy. The addition, I love the fact that the mayor was Ithorian, and that they actually they showed the Ithorian like speaking using the translator. I think this is the first live action Ithorian that spoke.
He makes a noise in episode 4 in the cantina.
Okay.
But he doesn't, you don't understand him. He's just like, rah, rah, rah.
But that's one of the things I really liked about this is that they show you like he's speaking his language, and then immediately the translator kicks in, so you can hear his speech underneath the translator's speech. And I liked the way that they did that. I've always found the Ithorians to be kind of fascinating in the realm of Star Wars, and to see a live action one done well, I was pretty pleased about. The twins, again, we talked about how good they look. It's funny because they mentioned the twins, they show the twins, and I kept thinking the twins seem very familiar. Like I've got to have heard about these guys before, and I went and did a little bit of checking. I was like, oh, the twins are like a new thing for the series.
Yeah.
I thought they were existing family members, like a job of family members, but it sounds like that they are new for this show.
I really was impressed with the twins. I mean, they look good. They were menacing. I really like the sound design on the male's voice. The female's, she didn't really talk enough to really get a.
I loved that.
Feel.
I loved that the female was basically like, for the most part, almost hiding her mouth behind the fan, and mumbling everything she was saying, just enough so that her brother could hear it.
I think that's going to come out. I think that's going to come out that she's the brains of the two.
Oh,
she's definitely going to be the smarter of the two.
Well, she's the one that basically was like, you should just kill him. Just kill this guy. Like, why are we even dealing? Just kill Boba Fett.
But I thought, I don't think you guys, I don't know if you guys noticed, and I may be seeing this wrong, but from the scenes with the twins, and they're being held up by their servants on the platform. I'm fairly certain the platform gets more bowed the longer they're standing there.
And the front guy is sitting there like wobbly as hell, and he almost drops him.
Yeah, I thought that was the little the bow in the platform was.
So nice. This is me having to do some research today, because I'm looking at the twins, and I'm looking at them being carried and all this kind of stuff, and I'm just like, fucking shoot them. Just kill him right then and there. And in some canon, the Hutts actually have strong enough like skin and stuff that they can basically like absorb and or deflect blaster, and that they can regenerate and things like that.
Yeah, blubber is thick enough.
Yeah, like it's thick enough to kind of do it. And then I'm just sitting.
Leia had to choke Jabba out.
Yeah, but then I'm just sitting here like I was like, but then scrawny Princess Leia just choked his ass to death. Like, what the fuck?
I mean, a much smaller person, to be fair, as I can say from experience, a much smaller person can totally choke out someone who is much bigger than them if you get them in the right position. And the way that Jabba's little wobbly arms were,
well, we've seen how big the mouths are, so the mouth to esophagus ratio is not that much. It's not like it's a really tiny throat and a really wide mouth. Like, I mean,
scientific discussion. I love this.
It's a sizable gullet there.
It's the Jedi version of a force choke, but with a chain, as far as I'm concerned. That's the canon now, is how Leia was able to defeat it. That was a version of the force choke. And I really, really loved the fact that they brought Black Chrysanthemum in. Yeah,
so that was the thing. That's the deep cut.
When
most viewers won't get.
When he walks out from behind the litter, I was like, oh my God, are you shitting me? I was like, I can't believe they made this little deep cut. And I thought the design looked great. They literally took him right off the comic page to put him on screen. Like, he looked wonderful. The costume design was very good. He looked menacing as shit.
I think they could have made his shoulder pads look a little less Koopa shell, though.
Yeah. The thing that I will give Disney a lot of credit for, they have not been afraid from the beginning to bring characters that were introduced in either cartoons or comic books into live action. They did it with Rogue One, where Forrest Whitaker's character had started out as a Clone Wars character. They're doing it here with The Thing, which brings me to my predictions question. Do you think we get Dr. Aphra ever? in a Star Wars show showing up in one of these.
I think if Doc and her bots were going to show up, it would be in this show.
Think so? Well, she has a connection to Kristan.
Yeah, no, that's again like both. Well, and that's the thing. Both Obi-Wan and Dr. Aphra have connections to Black Chrysanthemum. So like, I don't know. I would love to see Aphra and the bots make an appearance here. I would love to see a live action. The bots live action would be. I'd love to see that. 000, come on.
So that'll bring me to my last question. So this one's been reported a little bit. Now, we all saw the de-aging of Luke in Mandalorian Season 2.
Yep.
Where they took Mark, and they did get Mark back. And Mark was there, and Mark did the voice. So, CBR and a couple...
Mark did.
Mark is credited.
Mark is credited because they literally built his voice off of interviews and off of footage. They had a program AI. They had AI build the entire script for him. So Mark, they couldn't have Mark do it because his voice is just so different. It's too different. They couldn't tweak it back. But yes, he is credited because they used all the audio they used was his audio.
With that feeling of the de-aging technology and stuff, the CBR and a couple other outlets have said that the rumor is that the big one that we haven't seen yet is that Harrison was disappeared from the Indiana Jones 5 set for about a week.
And he was over across the street at the other set, which is filming very close to it. Very close.
The question is, do we think we see a de-aged Harrison at some point in Book of Boba Fett? Sean was very right with his predictions in Hawkeye and took his victory lap at the end of Hawkeye. So I'm curious about Sean's predictions here, but A, do you think we see Harrison? And B, are you okay with it?
Yes, I'm okay with it.
Do you think it happens?
I think it's going to be a much smaller segment than a lot of people are thinking it's going to be. I think it's going to be basically...
Luke was only in there for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be...
but that was a badass lightsaber fight.
A bigger... It's going to be a slightly extended cameo, if at most.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what do you think?
So... The fanboy in me would absolutely love to see a very brief appearance by Han and Chewie, especially now that they've got Black Chrysanthemum in, because there's existing relationship between Chewbacca and Black Chrysanthemum also that I would love to see them touch on even just briefly, like in this show. Like even if the two of them just like had to stand at each other like and face off and like have somebody between them being like hey or if Han had to be like Chewie, not today, like.
Another time, and then they take off on the Falcon.
Yeah, again, like I would be okay with it. I don't know that. I don't want them to do that because I don't want them to lean on that shit. And I feel like coming off of Skywalker, if they bring Han in on this, then they're setting a precedent that they're going to continue to do that through the rest of the series, the different series that they're doing, and I don't necessarily want that. Well,
we know Hayden's coming back for Obi-Wan, so that's expected, right? They brought Luke back for Mando, which in the context of the story made at least a semblance of sense.
I got a different question though. Do we get Bosk? Because they have shown I know they have showed a fuck ton of Trandoshans.
And that's why I don't think they'll show Bosk, because I don't think they will. If they were going to show Bosk, I don't think you'd see 50 Transoceans because it's too confusing to, again, not us, but the average audience.
I think we're probably going to eventually see one or all three of the three primary bounty hunters that are associated with Boba Fett, with Dengar, Bosk, and IG-88. We've already somewhat seen IG-88 in Mandalorian. I forget what his designation was.
I don't think we'll see IG again.
IG-11.
IG-11. But I think that since they basically already have the IG bot model made, I think they're probably at the very least. I think he's gonna be like panning across the cantina, and he's like in the background. Maybe I don't think he's gonna have any particular like import.
The Dengar thing is interesting because he was one of the people that helped Boba Fett get out of the Sarlacc or away from Tatooine and the old EU.
Yeah. The thing I think we're going to see, and I think they've kind of gave us a little bit of a preview in Chapter 1, is they clearly made it known that Boba had a relationship with the Trandoshans.
Because of his rivalry with Bosk.
Well, no. In that first episode, Boba said, I was doing work for this guy. I worked under him, and now I'm his boss, and this might be awkward.
Yeah.
So I feel like there is an opportunity for them to bring Bosk in via that relationship. Like, even if it's brief, I feel like that's there. I would love to see, I'd like to see like updated versions of Bosk and Dengar and Forlom and like IG-88. I'd love to see that little group.
That would be the good one. Would not IG, because we've seen IG in Mandalorian, but Forlom and Zuckuss like,
Yeah.
that would be funny.
What about? Oh, good.
In episode 2, didn't Boba Fett throw some shade at a Trandoshan about? He made a comment to some bounty hunter or some former thug about basically him being scum, or his boss was scum, or something like that.
Yeah, like I'm not a Trandoshan, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that was directed at Bosk.
Possibly. What about Baylor Valance? One of the other bounty hunters. Like you get kind of a half cyborg kind of thing.
I don't know how deep they're going to go into the bounty hunter, like the roster for this. I mean, of course, a Black Chrysanthemum is a deep cut already for people that are not familiar with that character. I mean, there's a lot of bounty hunters. I mean, Jodo Cast. I mean,
Master Muriel
in the EU. Yeah, I mean,
only Boba Fett gets to kill him.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. And especially, I like the fact that in this episode, like at least twice, he's referred to as a bounty hunter, and Boba's like, I'm not a bounty hunter.
Right.
That's not what I don't do that.
Well, that's because somebody died and he made himself king. So, like, I mean, he was a bounty hunter up until the end of Mandalorian season 2 when he fired a blaster.
When he shot Bib Fortuna and was like, my throne now.
Big question is God, I can't. Everybody knows him as Buttface. Is Buttface going to make a return in this? Dr. F was in.
Mallo, do you think they're bringing Harrison back?
Yes, I do. I think they are going to continue the fan service until they get to things like Andor, and we will get Thrawn in the Ahsoka series. We will probably get Vader in the Ahsoka series as well. We will probably get Maul. Maul will be the thing that is interesting in the Ahsoka series.
Maul's dead now.
Well, he was
somehow
dead
Palpatine returned. Okay.
The first time.
In this case, based on how they ended the Maul story, my guess is you're not going to see Maul. You might see him in flashback, but I don't think you'll see. Maul's dead now. Like.
More
I
dead
don't think
than
Obi-Wan left him this
and
time.
falling down a reactor shaft.
Yes, in this case.
I'm still salty about episode 9, not gonna lie. I was good until it was Palpatine. Could have been anybody else.
Like clones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Will we get a third Ewoks film? I hope so. I liked the Ewoks movies when I was a kid. Okay? You know what? Fuck you, Ewok haters.
No. I want to see them bring an Ewok back into like the modern Disney Plus storytelling that is not the cute, cuddly Ewok.
I was hoping that when they were thinking about doing the Rogue Squadron movie, which is now on permanent fucking hiatus, thank you, whoever at Disney, right? That we were going to get Lieutenant Ketch.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only Ewok that makes sense to be anywhere but. Yeah.
I want to see Wedge in an Ewok suit. Okay, if we're going deep cuts, we're doing it.
I don't mind the I do think we're going to see a lot more cameos through the end of the rest of this story. At the very least, just being a quick pan bys. And I do think we're going to see Han Solo. I really hope it's not like a major component of it. I would think it would be awesome if they just had him in there as like they get into a bar fight and there's lots of people shooting and they just kind of recognize each other and then go their separate ways. Just no dialogue, just kind of there.
Sorry, Tip just said something in chat that has me stunned. Palpatine was explained in Fortnite?
Yeah, he absolutely was explained in Fortnite.
Are you shitting me?
No, this
Prior
is
to
what
the release of
this is
episode
why
9.
this is why I'm so upset, because had they put that as a stinger at the end of episode 8, what they put in Fortnite, I would not have been so distraught about episode 9, because you would have had a WTF moment past the credits and you'd been like, wait, what? Because Snoke dies, spoilers, in episode 8. Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, now who really is the big bad? And then you unveil it and you're like, oh, well, hell, because you could have spent more time actually developing the fact that, like, Cyborg Palpatine is off doing his thing and growing Snoke's in a Bacta tank himself, and he's just putting them out there in the world. You could go into that whole lore. Somebody just did a cut on the Star Wars Reddit page where Leia dies in the attack on the starship. She doesn't Mary Poppins. Yeah, she doesn't Mary Poppins her way back into the thing. She doesn't have to do. And man, does that feel good as a cut. Does it suck because Leia dies? Yeah, in the right way. And you could have then taken the rest of that movie, because again, Kylo Ren didn't do the killing. It was his two wingmen, right? And so, like, he could have been living with that regret, and then it would have made even more sense again at the end when he turns against the Knights of Ren and things like that. So yeah.
My only issue with that theory is, again, knowing what was to have been, right? Where the sequel trilogy was supposed to have, each film was supposed to have a primary focus character from the old trilogy. Episode 7 was Han, episode 8 was Luke, episode 9 was supposed to be Leia because Carrie hadn't died yet. And if you've seen the stuff, Colin Trevorrow actually confirmed that the leak that happened was true. The leak of what Colin Trevorrow had written for episode 9 prior to Carrie's death, like, is just straight out better, right? Carrie sadly passed away before they could film episode 9.
Yeah.
And so that whole plan had to be scrapped. And it sucks. And they borked it up. But to go back, yes, Michael, they revealed the Palpatine thing in Fortnite like a week before episode 9 dropped. They had a Star Wars crossover event in Fortnite. And they did a big galactic-wide radio broadcast, and it was Ian McKellen, and it was him announcing that Palpatine had returned to the galaxy. And what Mal is saying is if you would have put that as a stinger at the end of episode 8, it probably would have pissed a lot less people off, as opposed to going, oh, we're actually going to do this reveal in Fortnite, and then we're going to give you a 2-line block of text during the crawl of episode 9 to tell you Palpatine's back, because corporate synergy.
Yeah.
So for those that didn't know, that's what happened.
As someone who is familiar with the whole Dark Empire comic series, like, I was okay with them doing that in episode 9, but I also felt like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, you should have, like, let that run through the entire trilogy, at least as a B plot, to then reveal it in the last movie. Like,
yeah,
at least bring out, like, little pieces of it here and there. But the way that they pulled it out in the last movie, that disappointed me.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of, like, the clone to Palpatine. I liked that storyline, but I didn't like the way that they shoehorned it in.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm laughing now because Chad is like, I still want to see the late night Hollow Network infomercials Palpatine did to fund his Sith fleet. Yes, I want that entire series, please.
If you recall, was one of my major complaints when we did the episode 9 podcast was that, like, where the fuck did the First Order get all these ships just magically out of nowhere?
Well, and it wasn't the First Order; it was a Sith fleet.
Yeah,
that was a Sith. Where did they get the people, and where did they get the ships that they could just hide in that nebula?
again, this is where they've run into the same problems as the old EU, is they have to go back and explain things that I really think they probably discussed in a writer's room, but never made it into whatever product they were putting out. Because again, later, if you read the second Thrawn trilogy, you find out. Like, it explains it. It's like, oh, this is what Palpatine's doing. Oh.
But that goes back to storytelling 101, right?
Yeah.
Someone shouldn't have to read a book, a second book in a second trilogy to find out something about a major plot point in your.
And I agree with you 100%. And this is the problem that Star Wars have. It's the problem that Marvel's starting to have.
Well, I mean,
right? Especially with the shows.
If you really look at Episode 9, you realize that he not only funded and constructed the Sith fleet, he also funded and constructed the First Order, because the First Order was his, like, diversionary project.
Yep.
And so he not only did one, he did two of them out of fucking nowhere.
And I'm going to respond to chat really fast. Other Doc, he didn't sell kitchen appliances. You know as well as I do,
those appliances
was in every pyramid thing ever, okay?
No,
that motherfucker was hawking LuLaRoe pants on Spacebook.
It's easier than that.
And essential oils, okay? He had a whole downline of reps, right? Because that's where he was making his money.
When you're the Galactic Emperor, you don't have to get sign-off on your expenses.
Right. Okay. That fool was doing LuLaRoe and essential oils, okay? He was doing some straight-up Amway shit.
No, you're thinking too hard.
And that's how he pays for it. And
you're thinking too hard into it. We all know.
It's not a pyramid scheme.
We all know.
Level marketing.
That sex sells.
Oh, God.
And when you have a Force user that doesn't have compunctions and has a clone army of himself, dude's pulling some tricks with the Force. That's how he funded it. 1-900 Sexy Sith or something like that going on.
You're saying that he had Star Wars OnlyFans?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only way that explains it, because let's be honest, in the real world, the porn industry is basically bigger than just about any other industry out there if you combine them all up.
Don't ever Google Sheev the Skeeve on the HoloNet.
Yeah.
Like, who says lightsabers have to be destructive all the time?
Wow.
Please don't report
See,
it.
his Schwartz is as big as mine.
Yep.
That's still
That's
the best
where we
Star Wars
are.
movie of all time.
www.sheevetheskeeve.
I love it. And now that we've all determined on this podcast about how he funded the Sith fleet with the combination of multi-level marketing and OnlyFans,
There you go.
right? Look, if Belle Delphine can sell bathwater,
Sith water.
If someone from an MTV dating show can bottle farts
Yeah.
until they have a heart attack.
Well, I mean, he wears those heavy robes all the time. They're gonna pick up some funk.
Oh, Sheev is selling his robes, right? Selling his used robes.
yep.
I have no words. I think we've reached the end of the Book of Boba Fett podcast tonight.
Yes.
I have one final
power of
question
the
for
dark
you, though.
side.
Okay, well, he's got a final
One
question. Okay.
question. Which is more disturbing, Darth Jar Jar or OnlyFans Palpatine?
OnlyFans Palpatine. Darth Jar Jar
Palpatine.
might as well be canon at this point. Misa gonna avenge you, Annie.
I feel like it's a Sophie's choice.
Oh, my.
Oh goodness. All right.
Tips in there saying we wrote another robot chicken sketch.
We might have actually. Yeah.
Hey, Tip,
welcome.
you guys spread the word. Me and Mallo want to write this stuff. If they give us a Star Wars show and some Adult Swim cartoons, Mallo would finally leave the evil corporate overlords.
Lower Decks
look.
did pretty well for Star Trek.
Look. I'm really good at creating things out of thin air. Just look at my IG for the past few days. There's some
true.
key
Go check
things
that out.
in there. Go check that out. Joe, thank you for joining us. I would ask you where people can find you, but much like Palpatine, you aren't anywhere on the internet.
That you know of.
You can find
True.
Joe in Fortnite.
Apparently,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
on
like
Facebook.
You guys can find Joe at my store buying boba tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, off on some weird planet secretly funding my Sith Armada. That's where I'm at.
There you go. There you go. Michael, where can people find you on the interwebs? If they too want to know about your Sith water.
You can find my bottled farts at I'm on the Identico show Chaos Inc. Every other Monday with being run over there by Alex, Mallo engineering the show. You can find me there. You can find me on the podcast Redemption, Star Wars actual play podcast. It takes place after the Clone Wars. We are not dealing with any Boba Fett related things at the moment, so if you want a break from Boba Fett, come and give us a listen.
Do go give them a listen. It is a very good podcast. Alex, outside of your store, where can people find you?
I am always Alex the Humanoid on pretty much every social media device, and you can find me here every other Monday doing Chaos Inc. and every Wednesday doing Identical After Dark until we finish the cast on this new space show. Mallo and I are still talking about another show for Identico. I promised I'd talk to him about it this weekend. We had a long conversation. We're not done yet with the story.
No, not even close. There is actually a new Identico. Yeah, well, there's a lot of that, and then there's also a Identico living campaign that will be happening out of your store, which is Gamers Heaven, Seattle. So go take a look, search it. If you follow him on TikTok, he does a bunch of TikTok lives where he talks to you directly from the store. He's got like a ring light and a stand set up at the front of the store, so he can just like talk to people. It was like I was trying to figure out who the hell he was broadcasting to while playing Warhammer the other weekend. Realized he was on TikTok the whole time. I
was on TikTok, and we had a pretty good little viewer run.
Yeah, so go harass him over there.
And buy boba.
Yeah, it's delicious.
I don't TikTok, but Alex's videos are entertaining.
Dragon fruit milk teas are amazing. I'm just saying.
Dragon fruit milk teas are pretty delicious.
Cool. If you want to follow any more of my hijinks and all of the crazy weird space stuff that I just announced and launched today, go find me at the Mallo Man. I'm literally everywhere as well because branding. Until next week, no, this coming Monday is not a Chaos Inc. show, but we will see you again next Wednesday for this show. Hang tight in there. Go check out our YouTube channel. Go search Identico on YouTube. PlayIdentico.com for anything that actually has to do with the game that all of this is based on, except for our podcast chatting and things like that. Go support us there. We've got a ton of stuff out there for it. It's a fun game. So, the more that you can do out there for us, the more we can do these for you. Until then, be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Drink your water, take your vitamins, go get vaccinated. If you haven't, please stay safe out there and take care of one another and stay weird. We will see you all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.